Organized crime has always lived in the shadows, in back rooms, basements, alleys, butcher shops, and bars where life and death are separated by the thinnest sliver of loyalty. Mobsters lived by a code, and they died by it. Tonight, we're diving into 10 of the most shocking, violent, and legendary mob deaths ever recorded. Hits that shaped history, toppled families, and became case studies in power, betrayal, and brutality. Albert Anastasia, Murder, Inc., boss shot mid-shave, 1957. The barber chair execution that became mob mythology. Albert Anastasia wasn't just a mobster. He was the Lord High Executioner, head of Murder, Inc., a man rumored to have personally ordered and supervised dozens of killings. His reputation was so terrifying that even other mob bosses walked lightly around him. But in the fall of 1957, Anastasia made one fatal mistake. He underestimated his enemies. The setup: Park Sheraton Hotel, Manhattan. On the morning of October 25th, Anastasia walked into the barbershop inside the Park Sheraton Hotel, a routine visit, one he'd done countless times. He sat in the chair draped in a white sheet, closed his eyes, and leaned back as the barber prepared his shave. It would be the last moment of calm he'd ever know. The hit. Two men wearing scarves walked quietly into the shop. They didn't run. They didn't shout. They didn't hesitate. Standing behind Anastasia, they raised their guns and opened fire. Bullets tore through his torso, neck, and face. Startled, disoriented, desperately trying to stand, Anastasia lunged forward, toward the mirror. He thought his killers were in front of him. He fought a reflection. He collapsed into a heap on the floor, bleeding out on the tile, while the gunman slipped away into Manhattan traffic. The aftermath. His body became one of the most photographed crime scenes of the century. His empire collapsed within days, and the message to the underworld was clear. No one, not even the executioner, is beyond execution. Paul Castellano, the Sparks Steakhouse Assassination, 1985. A mafia coup so bold it changed the underworld forever. Paul Castellano wasn't an ordinary mob boss. He was the head of the Gambino crime family, the most powerful mafia organization in America. But Castellano's leadership style, corporate, distant, obsessed with wealth over loyalty, angered the men who preferred the old ways. One of those men was John Gotti. And Gotti wasn't just ambitious. He was patient. He waited for the perfect moment to strike. The setup. December 16th, 1985. Sparks Steakhouse, Manhattan. It was cold, gray, and crowded. The perfect camouflage. Castellano arrived in a black Lincoln Town Car with his underboss, Tommy Bellotti. Neither man was armed, a fatal miscalculation. As the pair stepped onto the sidewalk, four gunmen dressed as trench-coated businessmen approached from multiple angles. No words, no warnings, just gunfire. The hit. Castellano fell first, collapsing backward onto the pavement, bullets tearing through his head and chest. Bellotti tried to run. He made it only a few steps before more bullets rained into him. Pedestrians screamed. Cars screeched. The gunman vanished in seconds, melting into Manhattan crowds. The hit was so clean, so synchronized, that detectives later described it as a military-grade ambush disguised as a street shooting. John Gotti would assume power days later, crowned by violence. The aftermath. The sidewalk outside Sparks Steakhouse became one of the most iconic crime scenes in mob history. A photo burned into New York memory. It marked the end of Castellano's quiet corporate mafia and the rise of Gotti's flamboyant, camera-ready regime. The message was unmistakable. If you fall out of favor in the mob, you don't retire. You get replaced. Bugsy Siegel, shot through a Beverly Hills window, 1947. Hollywood glamour meets a blast of gunfire. Benjamin Bugsy Siegel was a gangster celebrity, handsome, charismatic, violent, and one of the first mobsters to live like a movie star. He helped build Flamingo Las Vegas, but lost millions of mob money doing it. His investors, New York bosses, decided his charm had worn out, and on June 20th, 1947, they settled their balance. The night of the murder, Beverly Hills mansion. Siegel was relaxing at the home of his girlfriend, Virginia Hill. She wasn't there, a convenient coincidence many believe wasn't a coincidence at all. Siegel sat on a floral-patterned couch reading the Los Angeles Times. Behind him, a large window looked out into the night. A gunman crept up to that window and fired. The execution. Dozens of .30 caliber rounds shattered the glass, ripped through the couch, and tore into Siegel. One bullet entered his head and exited near his eye, leaving behind the infamous crime scene photograph mob historians still cite today. Bugsy collapsed instantly. Newspaper still in his hands, body crumpled sideways on the sofa. The shooter vanished into the night as quickly as he had arrived. The aftermath. Within hours, mob associates walked into the Flamingo Casino and announced a new management team. Siegel's murder wasn't just a hit. It was a corporate restructuring delivered through a storm of bullets. The glamorous king of Las Vegas died not in a casino, but in a quiet Hollywood home at the hands of men who no longer trusted him. Joe Gallo, gunned down during his own birthday dinner, 1972. A Little Italy hit so bold it became street legend. Crazy Joe Gallo, was the kind of mobster who turned crime into theater, sharp suits, movie star swagger, and a reputation for unpredictable violence. He feuded with the Colombo crime family for years and survived a gang war that left bodies across New York. By 1972, he believed he was untouchable. He wasn't. The night at Umberto's Clam House. April 7, 1972, Gallo turned 43. After a night of drinking and celebration, he and his family walked into Umberto's Clam House in Little Italy for a late-night meal. He ordered champagne. He laughed with his daughter. He ate oysters at 4 a.m. And then the door opened. A hitman, believed to be from the Colombo family, walked inside and opened fire. The execution. Bullets tore into Gallo's back. He stumbled to his feet, knocking over tables as waiters and diners screamed and ducked. Shot multiple times, Gallo staggered outside onto Mulberry Street, leaving a trail of blood behind him, before collapsing face first onto the sidewalk. His family watched in horror as the man who had treated his life like a movie died on the street in the most cinematic way possible. The aftermath. Newspapers compared him to a fallen actor. Bob Dylan even wrote a song about him, Joey. But within the mafia, the message was simple. No one escapes a vendetta, not even on their birthday. Carmine Galante, the cigar hit, 1979. One of the most iconic mob photos in history. Carmine, the cigar, Galante was a menace. A ruthless, unapologetic killer who terrorized New York for decades. He ran the Bonanno family with brutality, cutting deals behind the backs of other bosses and growing too powerful, too fast. And for that, his fellow mob leaders decided he had to go. The Garden Party death, Brooklyn, 1979. Galante spent July 12, 1979, having lunch at Joe and Mary's Italian-American restaurant in Bushwick, Brooklyn. He sat in the back garden patio smoking a cigar, as always, with two bodyguards at his side. But those bodyguards weren't really his bodyguards. They were accomplices. The hit. Just after 2 p.m., 3 masked gunmen stormed the patio armed with shotguns and pistols. Galante barely had time to stand before pellets tore through his chest and face. His cigar flew from his mouth and landed beside him in the dirt as he fell backward onto the patio tiles. His bodyguards didn't move. They calmly stepped away as the killers finished the job. The iconic news photo captured Galante dead, eyes open, cigar still next to his hand, as if death had interrupted him mid-sentence. The aftermath. Within hours, a new Bonanno leader rose. Within days, the underworld whispered the truth. The commission had approved the hit. The bodyguards had been instructed to stand down. The cigar, symbol of Galante's arrogance, became a symbol of his downfall. In the mafia, power is borrowed, and Galante forgot who he was borrowing it from. Frankie Yale, mob history's first Tommy gun hit, 1928. When organized crime upgraded its weapons, the mafia's violence changed forever. Before Al Capone became Chicago's underworld king, he was mentored by a powerful Brooklyn mobster, Frankie Yale. Yale was respected, feared, and deeply connected. But he made one fatal mistake. He crossed Capone. Capone believed Yale had betrayed him in a liquor dispute, and in 1928 decided to end the problem permanently. with a weapon the American underworld had never seen used in a hit before. The setup. July 1st, 1928. Yale was driving through Brooklyn in his brand new Lincoln coupe when a sedan began tailing him. At first, he ignored it. Mobsters had enemies. Following cars weren't unusual. But the sedan grew closer, then pulled alongside him. Inside were gunmen sent from Chicago, men carrying weapons that would define an era. Thompson submachine guns, Tommy guns. No one had ever used them in a mafia killing before. The ambush. The gunman unleashed a storm of bullets into Yale's moving car. Glass exploded, metal tore apart. Yale lost control, swerving wildly until his Lincoln crashed into the steps of a Brooklyn home. He died instantly, his car riddled with holes like something out of a war zone. Newspapers called it a mechanized slaughter, the aftermath. This hit changed everything. The Tommy gun became the mob's new favorite weapon, a symbol of the Prohibition era's violence. And Yale became the first recorded mob boss shot down by a machine gun on New York streets. It wasn't just a killing, it was an upgrade. Dutch Schultz, the bathroom ambush and his delirious deathbed rant. 1935. One of the strangest endings in mafia history, Dutch Schultz was unpredictable, violent, and prone to sudden drunken speeches that made even other mobsters uncomfortable. He extorted New York businesses, ran illegal beer empires, and openly challenged the government. When prosecutors came after him, Schultz wanted the prosecutor assassinated. The Mafia Commission said no. Schultz didn't care, so the commission decided he had to go. The hit, Palace Chop House, Newark. On October 23, 1935, Schultz and his men were eating in a back room of the Palace Chop House. Laughing, drinking, unaware death was literally walking through the door. While Schultz went to the bathroom, hitmen burst inside the restaurant armed with 45 automatics. They opened fire. Schultz's bodyguard was killed instantly. His accountant was shot multiple times. The room turned into chaos. Blood, screams, overturned tables. Schultz staggered out of the bathroom, bleeding from multiple bullet wounds, and collapsed onto the floor. But the story didn't end there. The hallucinated deathbed rant. Dutch Schultz survived the ambulance ride. He survived the first night. He even survived emergency surgery. Barely. Then, heavily sedated and fading fast, he began rambling a 3-hour delirious monologue to police who transcribed every word. It became one of the strangest documents in mafia history. He spoke in nonsense. Horses, French fries, being in a balloon, someone stealing his money, and the beautiful table with a package on it. Nothing incriminating, just madness. Hours later, Dutch Schultz died from peritonitis and blood loss. His deathbed rant is still studied today because no one really knows what he was trying to say. Salvatore Maranzano, stabbed and shot by men pretending to be FBI agents, 1931. The final casualty of the Mafia's first great civil war. Salvatore Maranzano was the last man who ever tried to crown himself boss of all bosses. During the bloody Castellano War, he outmaneuvered and outkilled his rivals, until only one threat remained, a young, brilliant gangster named Charlie Lucky Luciano. Luciano pretended to pledge loyalty. He shook Maranzano's hand. He even attended strategy meetings. Meanwhile, he was planning a coup. The hit, September 10th, 1931. Maranzano was in his Manhattan office, reviewing records and tax documents, his attempt to modernize the mafia into a corporate-style empire. Then the door opened. 4 men walked in wearing suits, badges, and carrying folders. They flashed credentials and claimed they were FBI agents conducting an inspection. Maranzano didn't hesitate. "I have nothing to hide," he reportedly said. Seconds later, the men dropped their disguises and pulled out knives and guns. The execution. They stabbed him repeatedly before shooting him to finish the job. Maranzano collapsed behind his desk as the assassins calmly walked out, straight past the lobby without anyone realizing what had happened. By the time police arrived, Lucky Luciano had already taken control of the American mafia. Maranzano's murder was so clean, so perfectly disguised, that it became the blueprint for mafia hits for decades. Angelo Bruno, The Gentle Don Shot in His Car, 1980. A quiet man murdered in the quietest way possible. Angelo Bruno seemed like the least likely mobster to die in a dramatic hit. He was calm, diplomatic, and hated unnecessary bloodshed. He preferred business to violence, a rarity in the mafia. But some men feared his peace more than his war. The night of the ambush, March 21st, 1980. Bruno sat in the front passenger seat of his car outside his home in Philadelphia, talking quietly with his driver. No shouting, no drama, just a normal late-night conversation. Then a shotgun pressed against the passenger window and fired point blank. The blast struck Bruno in the back of the head, killing him instantly. His body slumped sideways, mouth slightly open, as blood soaked into his coat. The driver sat untouched, because he was part of the plot. The aftermath. A neighbor later said the gunshot sounded like a book falling on the floor. That was Angelo Bruno's exit from the world, quiet, immediate, and carried out by his own men. His assassination led to one of the most violent periods in Philadelphia mob history. Even gentlemen breed violent replacements. Joe Masseria, killed during a card game, 1931. The murder that ended a war and created a legend. Joe, the Boss Masseria, was one of New York's most powerful early mob leaders. He controlled gambling, extortion, and territory through brutality and intimidation. But by 1931, he was losing the Castellano War to Maranzano. He needed alliances. He thought Lucky Luciano was one of them. He wasn't. The hit, Coney Island Restaurant. Masseria sat at a small wooden table in a private room at Nuova Villa Tamaro restaurant, playing cards and sipping wine. Luciano excused himself to use the bathroom. He never returned. Instead, gunmen entered the room and opened fire on Masseria where he sat, cards still in his hand. He died slumped backward, aces and eights on the table, the dead man's hand. The symbolic photo became one of the most famous crime images in American history. Luciano and Maranzano ended the war that day and reorganized the mafia into the 5 families we know today. This one killing changed the structure of organized crime permanently. Mobsters lived and died by violence, especially those who believed power made them safe. From barbershop chairs to steakhouse sidewalks, from Beverly Hills mansions to dusty Coney Island backrooms. Their deaths are snapshots of an underworld where loyalty is temporary, violence is currency, and the next betrayal is always one conversation away. This is Signal Noir Studios, where the next story waits in the dark.